Cultures at HKU and the lead of the Committee on Gender Equality and Diversity, Knowledge Exchange and Outreach Subcommittee. So a very warm welcome to the CGED Knowledge Exchange series on women and leadership. And we are most privileged to have with us today our honored speaker, Johanna Karanko, Consul-General of Finland to Hong Kong and Macau. The talk today is one of our highlights in celebration of International Women's Day. It is organized with the joint support of the European Union Office to Hong Kong and Macau, the Gender Studies Program, the Women's Studies Research Center, the School of Modern Languages and Cultures, and the Center of Development and Resources for Students at HKU. We are very grateful to all co-sponsors for their support. And a special thank you to Paul François Polidori of the EU office for connecting us with Consul-General Karanko and for supporting our project. And we have been honored in co-hosting IWD events with the EU office in the past, and we are so delighted to be able to collaborate with them once again. Europe is home to some of the most influential female leaders. In the Faculty of Arts at HKU, Europe is the center research area of various programs. For the last academic year, the Gender Studies program offered 2 relevant courses on leadership and European women. The courses offered by European Studies program of the SMLC also deal with the main aspects of contemporary European societies and civilization. Today, we are really honored to have Consul-General Johanna Karanko talk to us about gender equality in Finland and the EU. As Finland has always been and is a country that prides on being a leader in fostering diversity and gender equality. The country is once again putting the gender equality debate in the spotlight by establishing the first International Gender Equality Prize. This award highlights the fact that the whole international community needs to be more proactive than ever in working towards gender equality. This is an amazing initiative for a promising future. And with this in mind, I'm delighted to have 2 HKU gender studies majors, Teele, Rebane, and Bidhya, Shrestha, to introduce our honorable speaker and to facilitate our upcoming discussions, as they represent our future generation of female leaders. And now, without further ado, let me turn you over to Teele and Bidhya. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Today we are honored to have Ms. Johanna Karanko as our guest speaker. She is the Consul-General of Finland, Hong Kong, and Macau, and has previously been posted permanent representations of Finland to the UN in several places, such as New York and Geneva. In today's panel, she will be shedding light on what gender equality means and the challenges to achieving gender equality. Without further ado, let's welcome Consul-General Karanko.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. As said earlier, yesterday we celebrated International Women's Day. So happy Women's Day late to all of you there in the audience. Starting next week, it will be the 65th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. That lasts for 2 weeks. So March is indeed a month of gender equality. Hence, it is a perfect time to first reflect upon where we are when it comes to gender equality. Secondly, decide on what needs to be done in order to achieve the goal of gender equality that we all agreed to in 2015. Third, to scan the new opportunities and challenges for women's full and effective participation, equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision-making in political, economic, and public life. And last but not least, to brainstorm how we can overcome the challenges on the road towards gender equal, peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world we all want to have by 2030. Of course, we cannot do this all in one session, but I hope that my talk will give you food for thought and maybe push you forwards to becoming a gender equality activist. Next slide, please. I am passionate about championing gender equality. I come from Finland, which has been leading the way in gender equality with other Nordic countries and European countries for decades, and is today one of the most equal countries in the world. Measuring gender equality is an integral part of being towards effective policy making in gender equality, because it provides the data of progress and also of setbacks. The EU's Gender Equality Index has been tracking progress in the EU since 2013. Another index tracking progress is the Global Gender Gap Index. Finland used to be actually a poor country with few natural resources. So we invested in the people. We educated both boys and girls, men and women alike. In Finland, we believe that the strong commitments towards gender equality has been the basis of our prosperity and success. The rapid development of Finland would not have been possible without harnessing the potential of the whole society and not only half of it. I come from a family where girls have been encouraged to follow their dreams. My great-great-great-grandfather was a teacher in a small town of Rovaniemi. One of his daughters became Finland's second female lawyer in 1911. Another became a doctor. Both highly unusual professions for women in the beginning of the 20th century. Another great-great-grandfather of mine was a janitor in Helsinki. One of his daughters, my great-grandmother, tried to combine a career being a graduate of the Finland's Academy of Arts and having a family. Unfortunately, she died at 27 of Spanish fever, and we don't know where she would have gone had she been able to live longer. What is important was important for these women was that they were able to pursue their ambitions, and this was especially because of the support of their fathers, but also the removal of legal barriers that feathering women. Gender equality is not only a women's issue. The commitment of both men and women are needed to advance gender equality. In 2015, the president of HKU became a he for she impact champion, as did the president of Finland. Next slide. Finnish women have been able to vote and stand for office since 1906. This is the first time in the world to stand for office, the third time to vote. While women have made important inroads into political offices across the world, their representation in national parliaments is only at 23.7, which is far from parity. In 46 countries, women now hold more than 30% of seats. Finland is one of these with 47%. National parliaments are just one example of the status of women in political leadership. Women in Finland have been breaking the glass ceiling from the early 1990s in particular. The current Finnish government leaders, seen on the slide, are all women. One of them, the leader of the leftist union and the Minister of Education, is actually currently on maternity leave until autumn. That is possible even if she is a government leader. The images of Finnish young female political leaders, especially in recent years, have spread around the world, offering women role models. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, for me, there were only a few female role models in media and in history books. For me, one of them was the first UN Undersecretary General female one, Helvi Sipilä, who took office in 1972. Later discovered that there are, in fact, quite a few amazing, accomplished women all around the world in the history of political leadership and also in sciences and arts and so forth. Learning about their achievements requires a bit more effort than learning about the male leaders of the world, because sources are few, and also they are also in very exotic languages many times. For women aspiring to lead, their stories of perseverance and overcoming challenges are inspiring. I encourage all of you to investigate and find your role models. Besides the support of men, role models, women need the support of each other. As the former US Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, has said, there is a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. Next slide, please. In Finland, women participate in working life on an equal footing with men. Our affordable day care system guarantees a place for all women, and the free, warm school meals make it easier for both parents to balance work and life. Furthermore, the Finnish school system is quite relaxed and does not overburden parents, yet the learning results are excellent. I am a single mother from a middle-class family, and despite this, I have been able to pursue a career, including take up leadership positions because of the daycare system and the school systems and the general attitudes and flexible working arrangements. Finland has a strong legislation to combat discrimination and an obligation to promote equality in workplaces. Okay. While many glass ceilings have been broken, there is still room for improvements. And one of these areas is economic decision-making. Even in Finland, economic decision-making is one of the areas where there is still a large gender pay gap. And this is due to the highly segregated labor market, divided into women's jobs and men's occupations, care versus STEM jobs. Also, men use only a fraction of the parental leave, which affects negatively on women's career advancement possibilities, salaries, and later pensions. In Finland, leadership positions in companies often require a STEM education due to our economic structure. The number of female CEOs and board members in listed companies has grown steadily for many years without quotas, but women are still highly underrepresented. Only every 10th managing director of a listed company is female. In fact, there are more managing directors called Juha, Finnish for John, than there are females. Of board members, 30% are currently women. Equality cannot hence be taken for granted. According to the findings of the EU Gender Equality Index, gender balance in decision-making is a major driver of positive change. Next slide, please. To recap, here are some of the key findings necessary to advance women's leadership positions from the Finnish experience. Equal access to education. Nowadays, encouraging girls and women to study STEM subjects and programs. Repealing discriminatory laws and removing barriers to women's full economic inclusion, including investing in care. Calling out systematic biases and the engagement of both men and women for gender equality. Next slide, please. Now, let's look ahead. Technology and innovation are affecting all spheres of life. While digitalization provides many opportunities, it also poses challenges for the advancement of gender equality. Finland is one of the co-leaders of technology and innovation for gender equality in the coalition of the Generation Equality Process. focusing on the rights and empowerment of women and girls in the digital age. We need to increase the number, participation, and leadership of women in STEM, both in education and in work. That is, we need more women in tech. We need to bridge the gender digital divide. Girls and women in all their diversity should have access to digital technology. Digital skills are crucial in everyday life to accessing different services, education, and indeed participation. Digitalization will also have a profound effect in the future labor market. Women need to have the digital skills, but not only for STEM professions. Digital skills will be needed in all professions. Women should also have equal employment and career opportunities in the tech sector. Having more women in this sector at all levels will help develop gender transformative technology and innovations. For example, women have 50% more traffic accidents currently, or get more injured in traffic accidents, that is to say, because the standard for the airbags in cars is for men. So hence, we really need to have the women's point of view in all tech solutions. We need to prevent also and eliminate online gender-based violence and create safe digital spaces for all. Online gender-based violence is a human rights violation, and it's a threat for women's and girls' participation, including leadership in society, and affects negatively on democracy. Gender-based violence is unacceptable online as it's offline and must be treated accordingly. We also need to consider the role of boys and men, intersectionality, and the harmful gender stereotypes and social norms that still exist. Besides parity in leadership, we need the media to cover women and girls equally as commentators or in general. Next slide, please. We have come a long way, and there is a lot to celebrate. But there was also a lot to be done to achieve parity in leadership. Hopefully this talk has energized you to advance gender equality. We want to keep the gender equality in the spotlight with, as mentioned earlier, the first International Gender Equality Prize. Personally, I want to encourage all women to learn the basics of coding and AI, as these are the ABC of the future. In Finland, coding, it has been for a few years an obligatory subject from grade 1. And the University of Helsinki offers a free online mock called The Elements of AI in order, and this will be relevant for all leadership positions in the future. So women need to really embrace and learn about tech in order to stay ahead of the curve. And this is my objective too. Thank you very much. I look forward to a lively discussion with you.
All right, thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I'm sure it got everybody's thoughts moving and some ideas are sure to come up. For all the attendees, make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A box so that I'll be pulling them from there and asking our wonderful guest. So put them in the Q&A box, not in the chat box. Don't raise your hand, just make sure everything goes to the Q&A box so that I can get to all of them. But I'll start us off just with a kind of very straightforward question that I myself was wondering. So I'm from Estonia myself, so I'm not very far off from where you're coming from. And I just wanted to, so you brought a lot of statistics and a lot of interesting facts and how especially women are playing a larger part in government and politics. I was wondering, what are the most tangible ways in which you can feel gender equality in Finland when you go back as a woman? What are the things that you see every day? What are the differences that you feel every day? Sorry, we can't hear you right now. Am I the only one?
No. Sorry, I'm sorry. I muted myself while, in order to, you know, usually better, so you don't hear me drinking, for example. Gulp, gulp. Anyway, what do I see? I see more women in, especially in politics and in positions, maybe not really yet all in the kind of most advanced leadership positions. For example, there are a lot of younger under 40 women up and coming in kind of middle management, and hopefully they actually advance further from there. Also in media, well, lately there's been a lot of, then there's also a lot more women, and there's also a push from Finnish media companies to actually have parity on showing equally men and women. Actually not happening as much. There was a lot of discussion yesterday in Finland on this, that, for example, it's still about 1/3 women as to men as commentators and so forth. And why is this? It's not because you don't have smart women. Is it that they don't want to come out because of maybe the digital kind of talk that you get into on Twitter and so forth, all the bad mouthing? Is that something that is inhibiting women of actually going out there and showing their expertise? I don't know, but there's quite a lively debate. But I mean, there's what I think is good, that people are talking about gender equality. It is out there. What are the problems? What do we need? And also men. I mean, many men are quite engaged in achieving parity. Another question is, of course, intersectionality. We are both, Western European, Northern European women, but do we have, let's say, immigrant women? And we do have immigrants in Finland. Do we have them in leadership? Yes, we do, but not so many. And so also other types, other women from different walks of life need role models. What about disabled women? Are they in leadership? So, I mean, there's all these issues of intersectionality that also need to be taken into account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these are conversations that we're also having in Hong Kong, right? We got some women in politics, but who are these women? Who do they really represent? We got one question here from Kitty. She's asking, why is there more female representation in parliament, but not so much in listed companies in Finland?
Well, there's the economic structure of Finland is that most of our companies are engineering based. So they require a tech, we usually require tech background. And we do have the students studying tech, as in most of the world, seem to be predominantly men. And this then affects the ability of women to advance into leadership positions in the companies. Mm-hmm. And especially you saw in the slide that smaller companies are even more gender unbalanced than the larger companies. Because in the larger companies, in leadership positions, you have a personnel director, you have a legal director, you have a communications director, and those tend to be many times women. And the process director or usually then is a male, and then usually then the CEO happens to be a male. So that's why I had focused a lot on we need to get women into STEM, at least from the Finnish perspective, but with the digitalization taking over more and more industries, this will actually be even more important for all of us in the future. Okay,
right. Keep those questions coming. I got a follow-up for Chris question for this one though. So you're saying that it's mostly because there isn't the companies tend to be very tech-based, and there's just isn't that many women in tech yet because they're still coming up through university. So what are some tech companies that are led or founded by women that we should be keeping an eye on?
Tech companies founded by women. Well, I know there is actually a gaming company in Finland, which is all women. They founded the company, I can't remember the name currently, but I can send that to you later, but or you can look it up. But they founded the company because they were finding that the games had these stereotypical that came out. Women also liked gaming, and were looking at all the games are very the stereotypes that there were. For example, I don't know if you know Grand Theft Auto. My son used to play that. Terrible, totally, really unacceptable stereotyping of women. So there were these some of these girls who actually, women who started a gaming company. They wanted to have games that would also interest women. So that's one company, but tech companies started by women. I know there are a few led by women in Finland, for example, and there are a few women that they have actually founded a organization called Women in Tech, which has then spread around the world, which tries to get women in tech together to talk about problems, how to get more women interested in STEM subjects. But I have to really think about companies in tech founded by women. Maybe in the startup area there are more. So we would have to look at fresh startups in different apps. So I think this is only coming, but most of the tech companies from the established companies, listed ones, would be probably started by men. If you have any that come to your mind, I would be more than happy to hear that.
I'm also at a loss for one, but I think that's something that we should definitely be keeping an eye on, just so that we can also, support these companies ourselves and kind of spread the word. Still looking at the chat box. Chat box is empty. Come on. I'm sure you guys have some questions coming up after the talk that we've just had. But I personally have a lot of questions, so I'll be pulling us through in the meanwhile. You mentioned that one of the solutions to get women more interested in tech would be to start very early on. Finland, first grade already. Kids are learning to code, doing some robotics, things like that. That's a solution in Northern Western Europe, right, where you have the funds to do that and to teach such things at school. What could the solutions be in places where that's maybe not possible, in developing countries where you can't really afford to bring in a whole classroom of computers for kids to learn to code on?
Well, actually, coding is, you don't have to learn to code. You have to learn the thinking behind it. So that basically that you have to learn. You can do it with boxes and things like this. So there is a Finnish author called Linda Liukas, and she has written a book called Hello Ruby. And in Hello Ruby, this is for 3 to 6-year-olds. Coding is not done on a computer or any technical device. Coding is done using different kinds of blocks or whatever you have available, pine cones or whatever, but you have to have, it's doing sequences. I learned to code when many years ago. BASIC was the thing. Terrible language, I would say. It was a bunch of zeros and ones. So I think for the units, you could use anything. It's a kind of a mindset, and for the kids in grade 1, they actually not using computers.
Okay, that's a great solution. So it is all about thinking and just, it sounds a lot like motor skills, just trying to get your brain thinking about certain things in different ways. What are the struggles that you personally encounter trying to get more familiar with tech and AI specifically? Because we do also, there's, the younger generation that's still coming up, then there's our generation that's kind of, halfway in it already. And then there's also the older generation that didn't grow up with that kind of technology. So how do we make sure that all our generations and all these generations of women can become integrated?
Well, personally, I'm suffering with not having time. The elements of AI takes about 40 hours to 40 hours for 3 weeks to complete. So that's basically your whole summer vacation or something. I know I will have to do it, and I thought a really inspiring thing about this was that the CEO, or actually the president of the board of Nokia Networks, Risto Siilasmaa, he went to MIT and took a summer course in AI because he thought it was important. The other thing he did was learn Mandarin. So these were the things he kind of, this is a big executive of a large company thought these were the things that you needed to have for the future. So, well, I'm struggling with the AI, but I will get it done. The thing is, you can sign up, but it would be better to kind of do it in one go. So maybe once my post in Hong Kong is over, and I can maybe take a sabbatical, I can do that.
So where are you currently learning it on? Is there a program? Is there anything that we can write down ourselves that we can start on?
Well, for me, the Elements of AI, which is it's a program by the Helsinki University and Reactor, which is a Finnish company, and we is actually Finland intends to have 1% of the population go through this course. It is free, and you'd get university credits for it. And it's in all EU languages, so it's also in Estonian. And I hope maybe it will be available in other languages as well. But it's in English at least. So something that I thought would be, I've registered for the course, but I am struggling to kind of get going in that. But I think it's there's so much is going to be AI, and of course you need to read about what's happening and all the developments, and that's more what I'm doing. But I mean, I also want to understand what's behind, because once we go forward, I think a lot of our lives will be affected by these new tech solutions. AI is just one. Maybe we should also learn a bit about blockchain, what's behind it, especially in Hong Kong, which is a financial capital, and so forth. Okay,
we've got a couple of questions now. First of all, the AI program was called Elements of AI at the Helsinki University, available in a bunch of languages. And then we've also got a question. You mentioned the support from men is especially important to achieve gender equality, and that education in Finland plays a really significant role in reaching that ideal in society. Would you mind describing the school curriculum a little bit in more detail?
First of all, okay, so we have comprehensive education, 9 years. And in those years, let's say, the difference between Hong Kong and Finland is that from grade 1 to grade 6, you have one teacher that basically teaches most of the subjects, instead of changing class for new teachers. So you will have a specialized teacher for maybe languages but otherwise the same teacher is teaching you everything. That is something. But the basic subjects would be there. As in every school, there's been a lot of talk about that we have something called phenomena-based learning, but it has not actually abolished subjects, so they actually exist still. But we try to get the teachers to collaborate and work on larger topics. Let's say students would, for example, 1 week in a given month, learn about climate change. So the topic would be climate change. So they would do different things in math, in languages, in sciences about climate change. So that would be the subject, and all the teachers would be collaborating. So this is happening especially in comprehensive school. We have a lot of languages that we have to learn. Finland's bilingual, Finnish and Swedish, and then you have English, and then usually a fourth language. So there's quite a few subjects that you learn. And then there's, of course, maths and all those. And then also some very practical subjects, home economics, and woodwork and handiwork. All Finns learn how to knit, for example, and things like this. So that's maybe in the early stages, all up to grade 9. After that, you can either choose to go for a more academic program or a vocational program. And actually, or then you can do a combi program, which means that you get a degree, a vocational degree and an academic degree. Let's say about 50%, 60% actually go for combi or vocational, because and usually they take a year longer to complete basically 2 degrees in one. That is more popular nowadays. Yeah, and then but there you can in upper secondary or high school you can choose more what you want to do. If you want to be more focused on STEM, if you want to be more focused on humanities, languages, it depends. And that is maybe the where we should get more women into tech. And actually now I think the system is working towards that, because they changed the admission for university in Finland 2 years ago. And now you get the most credits in admissions for high-level mathematics. For anything. You want to do law? You should do high-level mathematics. Which is, of course, causing a lot of polemic, but maybe that will at least get women, once they, not fall out or not have the option of maybe choosing a technical subject after high school, if they haven't decided already what they want to do.
All right, so it's a lot more of a fluid approach, larger themes. Okay, we've got another question from Dr. Puja Kapai, one of our own professors. She says, thank you so much for sharing the progress of Finland in respect to gender studies. One of the issues that often inhibits equal gender representation and leadership is systematic and entrenched unconscious biases that operate to undermine opportunities for not just women, but particularly groups that are already less visible and marginalized. So how do you think that manifests itself in the Finnish context? And how do you think they can be addressed, these biases, to create a better pipeline and outcome for such groups?
Well, one thing is acknowledging that there are biases. And so that is definitely one thing that, so maybe paying attention and bringing it to the limelight, that's one thing. Then also, what I would say, career counselors is one who really need to think about it and not kind of stereotype in the sense that, okay, in this ethnic group, a lot of people become nurses, for example. No, maybe if a person has the ability, why not then become a doctor or do something completely different? So that's one thing. But also then one issue is directing also students in order to inhibit them from doing something later. One of them would be, for example, Finland is bilingual and saying, okay, because your mother tongue is not Finnish, maybe you don't have to take, Swedish as a high school subject, which is possible. But then you cannot become a civil servant because you will have to be bilingual in order to be a civil servant. So that will then inhibit you from actually pursuing a leadership job in the Finnish government. So there are these issues that one needs to be aware of in order to not block already from an early age the student's life. Then, of course, there's I think the role of role models and having role models from less visible groups also talk and show that these things can be done. I think one of the deputy mayor of Helsinki, she's an Afghan refugee origin. She moved to Finland when she was 8 years old, and she is an MP. Was an MP, and now she is a deputy mayor. So, of course, got university educated in between. But I mean, it says that you can actually do things, and that is a very good showcase for other women from ethnic backgrounds, refugee backgrounds that things can be done. But of course, there's other things like having the time to study and to dedicate to your studies. If you have to take care of multiple siblings, for example, so kind of getting the investing in care and providing possibilities for let's say young women not to be driven into just the care work at home.
Okay, we have another question. Getting more into education, do you think single-sex or co-ed schools have different impacts on gender equality development?
Difficult to say, because in Finland, we have had co-ed schools since the beginning of the 70s. So I wasn't born when we had single-sex schools. Sorry.
This is a very Hong Kong-based question. It's something that doesn't really come up a lot in the European context. So you can ask who asked that question. You can go ahead and ask a new one to make sure that you're getting the answers that you're looking for here. To go back into that bias question that Dr. Kapai had just asked, you mentioned that there is a large immigrant population in Finland and in recent years.
Well, not large, maybe 5% of our of ethnic minorities or are not Finnish, and the largest ones would be Russian and Estonian, and followed by Somalis. So necessarily don't stand out very much, except for a different language background.
Well, that actually brings up a very good question. Is that how do you think the integration works for the immigrants that are Estonian and look like me and you, very similar to one another, versus those who come from Afghanistan or Somalia, like you mentioned earlier? Do you think that there are certain biases towards certain types of immigrants only that are based on just appearance?
Well, the integration definitely of Estonians and Russians has been better. They are more employed than other immigrant groups. But it's not only because of appearance, let's say, because, for example, our Asian immigrants, we had a Vietnamese immigration in the 70s, many of them via Hong Kong or Macao. And they are very well integrated into Finnish society. So it's not only an ethnicity question, it's also a question about, for example, many of the Somali population tend to have large families. Mm-hmm. So for the women to be employed, it might be quite difficult if you have 8 children. Right. So there is that issue of getting into work when you have a large family, even though you have the daycare, but then you might have to be cooking or food for that large family as well. So and then there is, of course, the educational barrier. So at least the ones who came, the first generation, especially women moving from maybe Africa, might not have the same level of education as the immigrants from Russia or Estonia.
All right. We have a question.
Could I ask a question? It's actually from Georgina. Sorry. She would like to know, do you think that the pandemic is having a negative impact on gender equality, Johanna?
Globally, definitely yes. In Finland, I'm not so sure because, for example, how much that is the case. Because first of all, the schools are open for anybody who needs them. So, under 12s are in school, so they are not online. And we have had daycare has been open. So if you're a working mom or working father, for that matter, the daycare centers and the schools are open. So we don't have that issue of having to, at the same time, do your job and help your kid to be on Zoom or whatever. So that is not necessarily the case. And then young fathers or fathers of a younger generation than me are very gender equal. So they are pitching in very much at home. So now it seems that the whole society is baking and gardening and doing renovations and things like this because of COVID, because they're all stuck in their house or in their apartments. So in Finland, that the effect is not necessarily that great that it is globally, but globally definitely yes. Women have to have, you know, two jobs. You have the job, your own job, and then you have the teaching job, and then you're also cooking, because not everybody is going for the meal outside. So we have three jobs, or even more. So it is definitely challenging.
Okay. Just a reminder for everybody, we only have about 10 minutes left. So if you want to ask something, get your questions in. But we have two questions, and they look like they go together. They're just about on the same topic. So I'll put those two in one. So we have, nowadays, professional women in Hong Kong and China have worries about work-life balance if they are trying to start a family or have a baby, especially responsibilities as a mother that might affect their work performance and career development. They say hiring nannies sounds like just creating more gender equality. How does social support policymaking in Finland do it differently in childcare to support women for their mother's role? And then once the women have had their children and they're trying to re-enter the market, once their kids are grown up and they're going back to their work, they find a gender pay gap waiting for them. To finish, women face these challenges, and what is being done in Finland to get over these issues?
Well, first of all, we have maternity leave is just 72 days. So it's kind of like, then there is parental leave. You can split it any way you want between the parents. Most women are taking it, as in my slides I said, the men are not really that much taking the parental leave, though it has been increasing recently. So the government is aiming at splitting the parental leave into 6-6-6. So 6 months for the mother, 6 months for the father, and 6 months however they want to split it. But they would force the fathers to take 6 months off parental leave. So that is the objective. Because and then also another objective, because currently you can stay on parental leave, not all of it paid, until the child is 3. Then you have a next child, 3 more years, and so forth. So basically, that is affecting the career prospects of many women. As first of all, getting the job, because they're like, okay, she's going to go on maternity or parental leave, and we're going to have to pay for it, because the company will have to pay a part of it. And then she's going to be away. Maybe we shouldn't hire her. So that is inhibiting women getting the good jobs in the first place. Then there's of course the problem of coming back. Usually there's a replacement, and then you have to take the person back. They are obliged. Companies are obliged to take you back, which of course inhibits in the first place. So it kind of comes the first step is really, really tough. So that's what we're trying to actually overcome, so that the women would only be a shorter time on parental leave, max 2 years away, come back to work, and that also would be split more evenly between the men and women. Also the companies that are predominantly female, let's say in care work, in a lot of beauty parlors and all these, for them, this is a very big financial burden if they only employ women. So hence there is a big push to change that. Anyway, but otherwise, there is daycare. Your child is guaranteed a place. You can give 2 weeks time, and they will have to fix a place where you can put your child. It is great. You get a meal, you get breakfast, the kids get breakfast, lunch, and snack. I've enjoyed this really thoroughly myself. I remember when I had like the business trip that I needed to go on, I would take my kid in his pajamas, grabbing under my arm, take a taxi, drive to the daycare center, drop him off, and go off to the airport to fly somewhere for a business trip. That was as they opened at 6:15. You had to pick them up at 5, which was always a little bit of a struggle. So sometimes I ended up taking a cab to come home to pick up my child. And the cab pricing is, of course, not the same as in Hong Kong. It's a bit more expensive. So there are these challenges. But then there's always been this teleworking possibility already when my child's 18. So when he was smaller, already I could work from home. So we had the teleworking possibility when he was like 2. So I've been able to do distance work at home. And in Finland, helpers are not actually the thing. We do not have helpers. We will vacuum and we will cook ourselves. But of course, there's a lot of ready-made meals that you can use nowadays. And people are like, one of the things that what women say to each other, do not expect too much from yourself. Just, do the basic. Your kids don't have to be fed a gourmet meal every day. Basic food is just fine. And if your home is a bit messy, it's just fine as well. So don't expect, have so high standards for yourself. You can lower the standards. It's quite fine.
Okay, and just to reiterate that last question a little bit, specifically asking about the gender pay gap, especially after women return to work and their career has kind of stalled for a couple of years. How is that dealt with in Finland? In Estonia, we have a huge problem with the pay gap right now.
Well, the pay gap mostly becomes in Finland is because of women are working in jobs that are paid less than the men. Women are working in care, in the social area, education, and men are working in these high-paid tech jobs. So that's basically where the pay gap comes from. Of course, there is, if you're not advancing, there is a gap to pay, okay, a gap there. But the fact is that most women have 1.5 kids in Finland, so not many kids. So they're not going to be home that many years. They're going to most people would not take the 3 years. I think most people would take 1.5 years, 2 years. They think a 1.5-year-old is maybe a right age to go into daycare. I put mine into daycare at 9 months. He's fine. So it depends. So others will be more cautious about putting kids in the daycare, and others not. So I mean, but there is that pay gap, but it's mostly because of the types of work. For the same job, you'll get the same salary. Of course, women are not asking for they're not as aggressive in asking for raises, and I think that is also a problem. And I know myself. Remember when I was, how much would you ask for a raise, or how young would you apply for leadership positions? If you didn't have all the qualifications, would you apply? Women tend not to. I see this as when I've been recruiting, I see that the qualifications of men, they're quite bold and they will apply even if they fill only one of the qualifications. Women never do. Women always fill all the qualifications. But it kind of makes a name, especially if you're applying for the same jobs, for that guy who keeps on applying, gains experience, versus that woman who applies for the first time only when she's filled all cannot tick all the boxes. Mm-hmm. So I think women, we need to be more bold and ask for what we deserve. And for that, maybe comparisons in salaries are really good. Look at the comparisons. What is the average for whatever job? Ask for more.
Okay. And just one last question to kind of wrap us up and to leave us something to think about. So we've kind of established the Finnish model today, what the Finns have done to make their country a more equal place and a better place to live for anybody who's not a man. How can we apply this to Hong Kong? What should be the first steps and the first little things that we can do to start building this model up in Hong Kong, in the cultural and the context that we live in today?
You do have female leaders in Hong Kong. I think that is quite good. I think what needs to be done is you need attitude changes in companies because there's this thing about that mothers don't work. I think that's where the mothers should be taking care of their kids. You have helpers in Hong Kong. Many have. I mean, it is quite easy. Maybe the daycare system as well. There is, what's this about having only half day school? I mean, you don't necessarily have to have half day school. You could have the other half day play, but you need to have a system where women are able to work the full day, have, as well as men, or then men need to pitch in. That's the other thing where, which we are trying to change as well. Men need to pitch in. The kids belong to both of the parents. They're not just the women's kids. So there is definitely something to do. And I think young women can demand this. They can, say to why don't accept, having a spouse and say, okay, and I'm going to go out with the guys, or I'm going to go and do all these sports afterwards. And you're like, and the kids, maybe I think that, set rules in the family that, okay, your turn to take care Mondays. So kind of splitting up. I think a lot of young families in Finland are doing this. They're like, dividing the week to mom days and dad days, the afternoons or evenings. So you have time to do what, pursue your career goals, maybe work late on a couple of evenings, but not all of the evenings. So kind of, I think there's and this can be done globally, is sharing the burden with the other parents.
Okay, that's a wonderful thought to live on, I think, or to end us off today. So everybody's got to pitch in, and we're the people that have to demand change. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Lee, to wrap us up? Or
Yeah, I just want to thank Johanna for this inspiring talk, and please join me in thanking Johanna for sharing with us her invaluable insights. And maybe just as an end of the video, or a video of this talk will be posted on our CGED website. So so we are truly honored and thankful to you all for being here today. So that it concludes our talk today. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very